Hey everyone. So you have your Fortigate and its switchboard includes physical ports. Each can be configured with its own IP address or be associated to a virtual switch, either a soft switch or a hardware switch. That is, we are actually creating switches within the physical switchboard. But what is the difference between a soft switch and a hardware switch? Well, the difference is that in soft switch, the implementation itself is done at the software level and not on the hardware level. That is similar to saying, okay, port 1, port 2, port 3, you all belong to a soft switch that we will name it marketing, and it will have an IP address of 10.0.0 and so on. In a virtual hardware switch, the implementation is done over the physical ports themselves, where each port, each interface is configured in its hardware level to be a part of the same hardware switch. That is a much superior way to handle traffic, and in terms of performance, it makes a huge difference. Now, whenever traffic enters the switch and it is destined to one of the interfaces that belong to that switch, decisions are made by the physical switch itself, its forwarding table, which is actually the MAC table. Alright, so let's configure a hardware virtual switch. Alright, so let's move over to our command line, config system virtual switch. And now if I'll type the get command, I will see that currently I don't have any virtual switch already configured. So let's name one. Let's call our virtual switch, let's call it marketing. And let's set it up from the physical switchboard. All right, and now let's configure the different ports that will make out this switch. So let's use internal 4 and let's use internal 5 also, and let's use internal 6. All right, let's get back to our. All right, so now let's use the same command as before. Config system switch. Config system virtual switch. And let's see if we have a switch that is configured. Yes, we have. Here's our marketing switch. All right, now let's refresh our interface pane to see our new virtual switch. And there it is. Now, if we will head over to our setting page of that switch, we can configure its IP address, its management. Let's use LAN2 as our alias, and let's get him an IP address, and that's right. I'm using the same. Let's allow anyone to connect to it using HTTP and HTTPS, and let's allow ping also. And every device, every appliance that will connect to that subnet will get an IP from its DHCP server. And let's also add up device detection. Okay. And there we have it. We have a hardware virtual switch with its own subnet, with its own DHCP server. Any appliance that will connect to it will get an IP address from its pool, and any traffic that will head up to one of the interfaces that is within the marketing switch will be forwarded using the forwarding table. Let me show you the best user setting tips for your Fortigate, and we start right now. To get more easy setup tips for your Fortigate firewall, subscribe now and don't forget to click on the bell notification and you won't miss anything. So you have your users connected to one of the interfaces in your Fortigate and you want to set up different settings as authentication timeout and so on. So head over to the command line, config user settings, and the first command is set auto timeout. Let's move over between the different options, and there you can choose different integers from 1 minute up to 24 hours. Now the default is 5 minutes. Personally, I prefer to set the timeout to 30 minutes. So choose whatever suits you as an administrator and your company's policy. The second command is quite important. Set auto timeout type. Now, there are different types of authentication timeout. There's the idle timeout, the hard timeout, and the new session timeout. What is the difference? In an idle timeout, Fortigate has to see traffic that is coming from the user. If it doesn't see traffic coming from the user's IP address for the time we configured as the authentication timeout, well, it deletes the authentication entry and asks the user to authenticate again. Now, in a hard timeout, it doesn't matter if there is a traffic or not. After the authentication timeout passed, the user will be asked to authenticate again. That's a hard timeout. The last option, use session timeout. Well, that's the case where you have a timeout. Let's say it's 5 minutes. You head over to a site, you start to download a file. Now, after 5 minutes, the file download is not terminated. It still goes up and downloads to your computer. But if you head over to another site, that is, you create a new session, you will be asked to authenticate. Another option that every administrator needs to configure is the amount of failed attempts before the user is being blocked. That is the number of time a user can fail authentication until it is being blocked. Now, the default is currently 5. You can change it up to 100 times. I usually use 3 times. So that is set auth invalid maximum, that is the maximum number of invalid login attempts, and let's set it to 3. Some of your user will probably head over through a captive portal, that is outsource employees and so on. So you can set the set auto portal timeout. That is the amount of time that those employees will need to authenticate again to an integer of between 1 up to 30 minutes.